Yeah. Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip here with Jeff. Well, wait a minute. No, that's not Jeff. That is sitting in for Jeff tonight. We have none other than guest host Mark Phillips. Mark, welcome back to On the Chain. Good to have you here at guest hosting.
Thank you, Chip. It's always a pleasure to be here. One day, I'll actually be here with Jeff. So anyway, but
Would
I'm
that be
happy to
fun?
enjoy your company as well.
Yeah, it would be good. We'll just kind of go do it all together. But so we got a lot to sort of unpack tonight. We've got the BIS and Ripple, something going on there. Somebody went to Washington to call for Mr. Gensler's resignation. We'll have more on that as well. PayPal launched their new stablecoin. Been a lot of criticism and things going on about their stablecoin. And we got a bunch of other things. Also, some Ripple trial date has been set. And there's also some other brush ups around that as well. But you guys ready? Let's do it. You ready, Mark? Let's do this. Let's go.
Ready?
Welcome to On the Chain.
Yeah, welcome to On the Chain. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we got so much to talk about, Mark. I'm just thinking, how have you been, by the way?
I've been great, Chip. I have been absolutely great. Baking in the summer heat. Nothing
Yeah.
to see here. At least it's not Texas. Feel sorry for James Rule and the rest of the crew down there. 3 weeks without any rain and triple digits. So Virginia's not quite as
Yeah.
bad.
That's tough. We have the humidity, but we do get the rain daily, which is always a nice thing. It does cool it down a little bit, which is always good. By the way, that's a snazzy looking hoodie you're wearing right there. What kind of hoodie you got on there?
Oh, funny you should say that.
There it is.
New installment.
Official
Everybody
OTC
needs one.
merch. Star
That's right.
Wars, SEC Wars, Ripple Strikes
SEC
Back.
Wars, Ripple
I
Strikes
don't know
Back. If you don't have one, I'm sure Chip can tell you where to go.
you can on the chain.shop. Pretty simple. I've got some tech issues as always. That kind of happens here and there, but we got a lot to get to. We probably should start unpacking some of this stuff. Let's go look at this first one. I wanted to sort of frame tonight here. Is it showing? No, it didn't go. Did it go? Are we seeing something there? There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, perfect. So, Mark, you put this tweet out here. Let's sort of break this down here. Where are we? What's going on in the world? You want to just run through this?
Yeah, you bet. So there was a headline I saw in the news yesterday-ish, and it said U.S. American credit card debt hits a record $1 trillion. And that sort of coincided with a couple other stories I'd heard about Americans dipping into their savings, dipping into their 401ks and all that, not to go out and buy Lambos, but to pay for, to put food on the table, pay the light bill and all that stuff. So if folks are really, having to tap into their savings, tap into their retirement, and they're running up their credit cards at a record rate, something's wrong with that. You pair that with U.S. national debt. I think when we first started talking, it was like 26, 27 trillion. It's already skyrocketed up to almost $33 trillion. That's crazy. And then if you start looking at the unfunded liabilities that the U.S. Government has, when you start talking about Social Security and things like that, and it's easing up on $200 trillion, it makes me wonder, how do we ever pay that? Is it even possible to pay it? And if we don't pay it, what happens?
Yeah, and the very good question you have at the end of this is how does the story end? How does it end for everybody? The first thing that pops into my head is not wealth. I mean, it just doesn't end well. Like there's no end in sight. The spending bill, I know the budget that was officially was floated for the next 2 years went up to as high as 52 billion. And it's almost like it's hard to understand that we're at 33 billion or trillion. I'm sorry, what am I saying? Billion. I can't even fathom trillion. And then we want to just
a really big number.
You want to just casually, well, let's just double that, right? I mean, and find out where we're at. So I thought that was like the first thing we would start with too. And then I thought too.
Yeah. So Chip, the thing it reminded me of when I started thinking about this, the big picture was back in 2008 when we had the financial crisis that sort of started with a lot of real estate, subprime lending and all that. And you started hearing these stories in the news about people who knew they couldn't afford their house. They knew they were going to lose the house and probably end up declaring bankruptcy. And so one of the things that the media would write about was they'd go run up their credit cards, just max out the credit cards, buy everything they could, knowing they're going to declare bankruptcy. And it's like, is that what we're doing? I don't know, but it sure looks like it. And, I don't know what the alternative is. Do you just stop spending? We can't really do that. So I don't know how we get out of it.
Mark. At some point, you got to cut. You got to really, every household, we have to do it, right? You got to you get into trouble. You have to figure out, what are we going to cut?
Well, that's right. But at some point, you get past the ability to even make a dent in it. It's
true.
The debt can get so big that we have trouble even paying the interest on it, much less paying down the principal. And I don't know if we're there yet, but I saw a statistic the other day about in just a few years, we were projected to spend more on interest on the debt than we do on national defense. Wow, that's staggering.
That's frightening.
I don't know where it goes. It was an honest question in the tweet. I have no idea how this plays out. But we're all in it. We're all sort of strapped into this ride, and I guess we'll find out together.
We will find out together. What else are we going to do? It's going to come due. We're going to figure it out. So PayPal went ahead and they released their stable coin. And a lot of people in the XRP community there was a big dust up about, they used Ethereum and what are the rates going to be? They have this new shard coming out, which is probably going to lower the rates, but it's I saw something by Tony from Thinking Crypto put out, and he had a really good observation. He's everything we hate in a maxi, we don't want to become the maxi. It's hey, you can criticize the network that they're on, Ethereum or this, or they should have built on XRP, they should have built it on XLM, they should have built it on, HBAR, Hedera. You could say that. The thing is they went to the most utilized and probably, especially for business, chain out there, and that's kind of where they started. So I think when we think about it like that, I think that we'll have to wait and see what it is. Now, it's supposed to be backed by gold and precious metals and some other things. I don't know what the real use case is for it. Aside from because you could use existing cryptocurrency. I'm not sure why they have to do it, but I'm not really sure what that is. We'll have to wait and see, right? Is it going to get adoption?
I don't know. PayPal's got a huge user base. So I think it has a good chance of getting adoption. If you pull back and look at it from a broader perspective, any kind of mainstream adoption for blockchain, digital or distributed ledger technology is good for the industry. Okay, so it's not XRP out of the gate. That's okay. The more you have it normalized, the more you have people using it and relying on it, and it becomes normal. Then you can actually have a competition. This is where we start to get into that level playing field. Then you can have a competition. Who's got the best tech? Who's got the best offerings in the marketplace? And if Ethereum wins that one, so be it. But just because somebody rolls out with Ethereum doesn't mean they have to stay with Ethereum. If there's another platform, another layer one that has better competitive aspects to it, I'm sure somebody's going to make the business decision to switch over to that. So just because they don't come out of the gate with XRP doesn't mean they'll never adopt it. And even if they don't, even if it stays Ethereum, it's still good for the sector. And that's great. What we want is, we know for sure there's not going to be one winner take all blockchain. None of them are designed to be everything for everybody all the time. So if you get, essentially all the money, all the business moved over into some blockchain or DLT solutions, then you can, wrestle over, who has what share of the market. But the biggest thing is not fighting over each other. I'd made some reference to the old VHS versus Beta
Beta
contest.
was better, let's face it.
Beta was better. Technologically, Beta was way better.
So
but it
was
didn't
Apple. It
win.
didn't get, that neither one of them won initially.
Right, exactly. But you play the long game, and it sort of works out. Not for Beta, but for Apple, it certainly worked
Yeah, it
out.
worked out for Apple, but not for Beta. Beta did,
Right.
yeah, and I had Beta back in the day. What do you
So
think of this, Jim?
there's a scramble to get to critical mass first, but what we're really talking about is potentially all the money, all the business in the world. So who's going to get critical mass there? Well, there's a lot of opportunity for everybody.
A lot of players out there. So Jim D making a point. PayPal has a mafia control mafia control contract over their token terms. PayPal can zero your account for anything it wants. And it's so funny that so I put together a little video, a little rap video, which on the PayPal thing. I leveraged a little bit of AI here, but I put this out. So I was going to play this because, and the words will be on the screen, but you can kind of say it. And Jim D kind of like prefaced it there. But let's listen to this here. Let's go put this up on screen here.
Pounds in the game with the coin, that's me. Pegged to the dollar, it's a stable choice. But let me break it down with the real voice. Centralization, man, that's the real shot. They can freeze your wallet just like that snout. Delete it, control me, your funds ain't free. Decentralization's the key, can't you see? Give me the freedom, the blockchain way. No central power, no one to obey. Decentralize the game, let's take back the reins. Say no to the control, break free from the chains. See?
Great.
We want freedom with decentralized rule. No one to rule us, no shadow of doubt. Fight the game, change, regain control. Send on the power, let decentralization roll. We crave freedom, decentralized vibes. No more controllers, no corporate pops. Take back the power, let's lead the charge. Say goodbye to central control, we live and learn.
Nice.
There we go.
Nice.
And there we go.
And appropriate. This is the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So there you go.
There you go. So I was like, it's amazing, this AI stuff. It's like, you feed it the lyrics and it does all that. It's incredible. That and video. So I've been exploring every bit of that AI stuff. I spent a lot of time doing that. It's so funny. I would do a channel about AI probably more than, if I was going to talk about something, I'd probably talk a lot about AI and what's going on. But there's so many great people out there that already do it that there's no real reason to. But no, it was a lot of fun to put that together because I think decentralization is really kind of coming up everywhere. It's what governments are most afraid about. It's what companies and banks are afraid about because it eliminates that middle sort of player in the equation. And it basically sort of, when you talk about leveling the playing field, decentralization does that for everyone. Whether it's going to be voting on the blockchain, whether it's going to be, distributing funds, whatever it's going to be. I think that's really where we're sort of headed. So I think there's a lot to be gleaned from that. And we'll see with PayPal. I mean, they have two functions that you can freeze it, but you can also delete it. And, recently PayPal got in trouble I think it was in 2022 when they were deplatforming people because they didn't like the way they thought about something. And Elon Musk, original PayPal mafia. And also we had, his name's going to escape me now. What is it? What's the other guy from the PayPal mafia? Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel also, they came out and said it was like a Black Mirror episode, like what's going on. You can just like, oh, sorry, your stuff doesn't exist anymore. So they're doing the same thing, carrying that forward with this, with their new token, their stablecoin. And then they had some like obscure language like, hey, if you are distributing some information that's not whatever, it was really kind of vague and we could fine you $2,500. You're like, what? And it didn't even have to happen on their platform. So we're getting to a point where it's kind of weird.
So think about, I totally agree. And if you think about when PayPal was first hatched, they kind of had a corner on the market, right?
Yeah.
But now every day it seems there's new ways to move value to somebody. And so that lock on online payments, which was so critical for eBay initially, and then Etsy and other online platforms, that has deteriorated to the point where there's a lot of options. So then you get back into this competition. And so if enough people don't like the terms of service, they go to another platform. It's just, same thing with Twitter /X or any of the other social platforms. You don't like the terms of service or the offerings on one, you've got options. And that's one of the cool things about crypto, blockchain, digital assets is there's an exploding world of options. And so, nobody's going to be able to have these draconian rules for too long, at least not because people don't feel like they have options and don't have anywhere else to go. That's changing, and it's changing fast.
It really is. And I think that was well said, because there's always going to be a place to go. But, I mean, 40, 50 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years, it's moving so fast, you were kind of stuck with something. So if you got deplatformed on one, you're done. That was it. But there are alternatives today. And so that's kind of, I've always felt the same way with the states' rights, that depending on, if you didn't like what was going on in one state because they have their own constitution, just go somewhere else. Go live in a state that's more friendly towards the way you think or you believe. And that's where, the states, I like the whole idea of the decentralized thinking of the founders of the original U.S. was they wanted to have states' rights. They wanted the government to kind of be there, but not interfering too much. And so I think that it was as decentralized as it could have been for the time, but it went back to the states, it went back to the local governments, it went back to the towns. And that's kind of like what it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, we've got, as U.S. citizens, we've got the right to vote, but we also get to vote with our feet, like you described. Mm-hmm. We also get to vote with our wallet.
Yes, we do.
You've got a lot of options. You have power.
Yeah, and I think it's not just us. I think what we're finding out, and the reason that blockchain is so significant, and really the whole concept of decentralization, I find that out of anything that's happened, maybe over the last 10, 15 years, 20 years, what's really brought everybody together across the world is this whole concept of decentralization. Also, breaking down borders, cross-border payments, not getting hammered for 10, 15% fees anymore, and watching that come down. But I think the concept is the same. As humans, we all want to just be able to pursue happiness. We want to be able to live our best lives. And I've always felt like, hey, you can do what you want to do, as long as you're not hurting somebody else, and free to be who you want to be and express yourself the way you want to express yourself. But the draconian stuff is like, leave that at home. You really don't need that. They're just opinions. And you know what they say about opinions, Mark? Everyone's got them, right? So it's like, I wanted to segue to this video that you had popped up tonight, and Mark, you did a great job of like sourcing the stuff. Always great when we can kind of source stuff together. But this was Bruce Fenton, who went to Washington D.C. Teased a little bit in the opener, but I thought we'd watch this and then let's chat about it afterwards. But get your thoughts on this.
Absolutely.
Securities Exchange Commission to call for the resignation of Chairman Gary Gensler. This is my industry. I've been in this industry my entire life. I grew up on the floor of a brokerage firm. I got my first job at 14 at a major Wall Street firm. I got licensed at age 19, and I've been licensed ever since for over 30 years with a flawless compliance record, working with broker dealers and registered with the SEC. It is absolutely crucial that the United States markets maintain its place as a respected global market, free from fraud and bad actors. Mr. Gensler, your chairmanship and your behavior does not jive with those goals and does not help the United States markets. I'm calling on you to resign for many reasons. The ties with Sam Bankman-Fried and your agency overseeing the largest fraud since Bernie Madoff is reason alone for you to resign. Frankly, I was surprised that you lasted a couple weeks after this. You had extensive ties with the largest fraudster that we've seen in a generation. You gave him unprecedented access, the kind of meetings that no one else in our industry. You have ties with him, with his president, and his general counsel who used to work with you. You've never, as far as I know, given any transparency to why you did this. We all know the reason that you did it. It's because he stole client money and donated to your party. You're a partisan Democrat, and you served as campaign finance chair under Hillary Clinton and oversaw the payment for the Steele dossier. It's expected that you be partisan, but it's expected more than that, that you follow the Constitution. And you've abandoned your oath to the Constitution by allowing a fraudster like this to thrive because of your political ambitions. Your ambitions to be Treasury Secretary and your ambitions to work with people like Senator Warren to harm the industry far beyond your congressional mandate and your oath to the Constitution. Furthermore, your pushing of ESG and other hyper-partisan issues is far beyond the scope of what you should be doing as SEC chair. Mm-hmm. Your behavior towards the cryptocurrency industry has been shameful. You have driven one of the most exciting job creation engines overseas for the most part. And you've been a black eye on our industry. I care about this industry deeply. I care about the United States securities markets. I care about our economy. And we must have good actors. This is why I'm asking you to resign. If you disagree with these statements, why not have transparency? Why not do a Twitter Spaces? Elon seems to have time. Presidential candidates have time. And you, while you call for transparency among the those who are raising capital, you've refused to give it yourself. You haven't explained these extremely concerning behaviors, and you've harmed an entire industry greatly. I call for you to resign because that's the right thing for America and the right thing for our markets. I want clean markets, no bad actors.
Wow, that's a lot. He said a lot right there. What do you break it down, Mark?
Oh my God, he summed up so much of what we've been thinking about, talking about, stressing about for the last 2.5 years during this lawsuit. If I could get one wish, it would be that the House Financial Services Committee either plays that in its entirety in a committee, or maybe even better, calls Bruce in to testify, to get him to tell his story just like that. It's powerful. And dude hit every one of the marks, and he was spot on. This is not good for the country. You and I have talked about this before. We're not, we don't exactly see eye to eye politically, but that's okay. We 100% agree on this, that what's been done in the last couple of years under the SEC is terrible for the country. It's terrible for crypto, but it's terrible for the country. And it just can't go on. Well, I don't think we can afford for it to go on. What do you think, Chip?
No, I mean, I think he broke a lot of stuff down, and there's a lot to really unpack on what he was talking about. But, Bruce has always been really vocal and outspoken for the freedom of blockchain. But the one thing I didn't know about him is before I saw that video, I was really unfamiliar with how his whole life was framed around really being in the industry. So if anybody has the right to speak about it and the way he spoke about it so eloquently and shared, hey, 14 years old, I was on the floor. I was doing this, I was doing that. This is like his whole life and securities license and everything else. This isn't somebody who just dished an opinion. This is somebody who lived it and spent really most of his life around the industry. So I feel like that in itself carries some weight. But I also like the fact, by the way, he talked about one of the things you brought up, which when I first watched it, I was like, whoa, you're going there. I really didn't think he was going to go and talk about, the fact that he was the bag man for the Hillary Clinton campaign and paid for the Steele dossier, paid for the Alpha Bank, that whole thing that went down. And what I was surprised about was that he even brought that up. But you almost forget about all the stuff. There's probably a lot more that we're not even thinking about. By the way, we will have Byron Donalds, congressman from Florida, who will be on the show at the end of August. And he was the one that actually had the hearing where he cornered Gensler. Mr. Gensler, you are under oath. Did you pay? He's like, he had him on the ropes. And I was like, so we're going to have Byron Donalds on here. It's something we really want to talk to him about. I want to play that clip, break it down, and get his thoughts on that. But no, Mark, I mean, it really is something that's the whole thing. Is like, we do sit on opposite sides of the spectrum, but we have a lot more commonality and a lot of overlap in areas. And this is what we're missing in the world today, is that everything's got to be so polarizing, and that you can't have a conversation. You can respectfully disagree. It's like, hey, I don't agree with that. Okay, cool. We would go a lot further having these kind of conversations than to constantly be kicking dirt in everyone's face. It just doesn't move the ball forward. And it's like, you can't always get your way. There's got to be some kind of compromise at some point. But I don't know. We're in a weird place. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. So, got to say, Dobrodon Sreden, he had said people do not have to agree on every topic nor share the same sides in politics, but they will, in the end, always agree on what's good and what's evil. 100% right there. And so we've got a lot of common ground. And I think as a community, we have a lot of common ground. And so we have been pretty successful at uniting, at least within the XRP Ripple community, uniting and pulling in the same direction. I thought Representative Donalds was masterful in his questioning in that committee meeting. There's something that Bruce, and you touched on this, Bruce brings a gravitas to the discussion that, folks who are not in that industry don't necessarily have. I don't have it. You don't have it. We don't work in the securities industry, but he does. He knows it backwards and forwards. And when he says, this is bad, you kind of have to listen to him. The other thing I would go back to is something that John Deaton has brought up. And I think he's not just with his lawyer hat on, but when he, is thinking back to his days as a Marine officer. I'm retired military as well. And one of the things that we get every year is ethics training. And one of the key messages that comes through in the ethics training is not just don't do things that are unethical, but don't allow situations to exist that appear to be unethical, that the appearance of it is just as damaging as the actual doing of the thing. And so even if they didn't do anything wrong at the SEC, which I don't believe, I think there's pretty clear evidence that there were a lot of shenanigans going on. Yeah. Just allowing the appearance is a violation of federal ethics regulations. So they've got a lot to answer for. A lot came out in the Ripple case. More is coming out from the lawsuits and the FOIA requests every day. And it just gets worse and worse and worse for the SEC. And again, from my perspective, it's not necessarily a political thing. Gensler's one party. Clayton was the opposite party, and he started the thing. And Hinman was appointed just like Clayton was at the same time. So there's a rottenness that looks like it's there that transcends any particular party. And I think Congress needs to look into it. Some investigative journalists need to start unpacking it and need to hold some people accountable, because it's not, Bruce is right. It's not good for the country.
Not at all. Look, I want to get this up here. Sir John says, Mark, do you, as an experienced foreign affairs expert, think the blockchain tech could be used in international affairs like aid or credits or humanitarian issues, tokenization of international contracts?
Well, I would never claim to be a foreign affairs expert.
You are now. Sir John said you were, so I believe him. You are foreign affairs expert.
Well, I'm not going to claim that, but I think I think we've seen examples where it's already been blockchain and DLT has already been used to distribute aid to folks in humanitarian crisis areas. I know it's been used in Ukraine. I believe it's been used in other parts of the world as well. It kind of goes back to our discussion about PayPal. If there's a faster, cheaper, more efficient way to move value, that's what people are going to gravitate to. And if you're trying to get, life-saving aid to somebody who is in a disaster, you're going to do it the easiest, fastest, cheapest way you can. And you're going to be kind of agnostic about what the platform is. So, to answer the question, I think it's inevitable. Same reason I think it's inevitable that it's going to move into, if not take over, pretty much every other way that we move value.
Yeah, that's well said. Ripple. So let's get to like some of the things we talked about. So Ripple's working with the Bank for International Settlements on Payments Task Force. And what interesting is like the BIS. I actually had it wrong. I thought it was like a bank. It's BIS for Bank of International Settlements, but the Bank for International Settlements. So there you go. The task force here. So this is kind of an interesting sort of a development here. What do we have? Let's see. I wanted to go into. Let's see, there it is right there. So the BIS Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructures announced the membership of its cross-border payments, interoperability, and extension task force. For further details, look here. And I think I have that queued up. Hopefully I have that one over here. Yeah, there it is. So cross-border payments, interoperability, extension task force composition. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. So if you see the chairs, there's some of the task force members themselves. And as you can see, there's a pretty good mix in there, but you can see Renee Hutchins she's the Director of Payment Operations for Ripple. You also have Saskia DeVolder from Swift. You got Payments Canada in there. You got the Clearinghouse, THC, Worldlines in there, Pan Africa Payment Settlement System, goes as PAPS. So there's a whole bunch of them in here. Finality International, Iberpay. So what are your thoughts about this? Of Ripple having a seat at this table here?
I think it's hugely indicative of the impact that Ripple is having and expects to have. So I believe there are multiple task forces under the BIS. This one's on financial infrastructure. So if you think about that, why they're not bringing Ripple in because they want to know about XRP. They're bringing Ripple in because they know that they have made headway in the infrastructure, the broader infrastructure side. So part of it is being regulatorily compliant. Part of it is having the right tech stack to be, and part of it is having the right connections and relationships to be able to tie all these disparate things together. The fact that there aren't any of Ripple's big competitors in that list.
I was going to just say that, Mark. You notice something very interesting. There are no other blockchain companies on here. There are some other payment like Wise, which recently rebranded as Wise. They formerly were TransferWise, but they just moved to Wise. They've been doing transfers mostly peer-to-peer, person-to-person, but that's why they're at the table. You got things like Nubank, Deutsche Bank is there, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Bank of China. But the only one that I noticed on this list in the blockchain space is Ripple.
That's right. So you've heard people say before that the reason public-private partnerships are so important is because governments don't innovate. Private industry innovates, then governments adopt. It's kind of, from what I understand, it's a similar thing with banks. The banks move slow. They're very conservative and cautious. Yeah. And so if somebody else, a smaller, more bleeding edge type player, develops a new technology or a new process that can give them a competitive edge, then they'll test it and maybe adopt it. So if you go back to that list, you'll see there are big banks in there: Societe Generale, Wells Fargo, Bank of Australia, I believe. Anyway, so there are big banks there. So you take those out of there: Bank of China, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Deutsche Bank, and so forth. You take those out, and you're really left with a very small list of tech partners, Ripple being probably the main one. So I think that says huge things about how BIS in particular sees Ripple's potential and the technology that Ripple brings to the market.
Yeah, and also too, I noticed MasterCard's here. You don't see Visa, you don't see Amex, but if you look at who sits on there, Alan Marcard, who's the executive VP for Transfer Solutions, right? Kind of fits right in. But it's kind of interesting, like some of the things that we've seen coming up for Ripple as of late, just in the last couple of weeks, there's another story we have here. I want to see if I can hopefully locate it. Where is it? I got so many stories up here. I don't know if we get through it all, but that's what I hate about having so many tabs. It's kind of hard to. Oh my gosh! Let me see if I can.
I was going to start with, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, except it hasn't. There's like 5 major headlines every day, if not every hour. seems like.
Yeah, it seems like things are moving at breakneck speed right now. It's like crazy. I don't know if I had that story, but we'll get right to the next thing here. Here it is, right here. This is it. This the ISDA. So let's talk a little bit about that. So this is another one that came out just recently in the last couple of days. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. But the ISDA, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So there was a story that that Ripple had joined the ISDA, which is the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, I believe. Basically, it's about 1,000-member organization that has the major financial players globally as members. Ripple is an associate member, so if you'll see right there in the center what that means, I think that gives us some more cues to why Ripple is there. So, designed for service providers, key components of the derivatives market infrastructure, like we just talked about, such as technology solution providers, exchanges, intermediaries, clearing organizations, and repositories, including law firms, accounting firms, and so forth. So if you really dig into that associate members list, you'll find law firms like Sullivan Cromwell and some others that we know. But you don't find a huge number of the tech companies like Ripple. One other one that jumped out at me that I thought, that's interesting, is R3 is also, I believe, an associate member.
R3 is also there. Yeah, they are.
So do you have the that visual capitalist graphic available that shows sort of the size of the derivatives market?
Let me pull it up. I'll pull it up here first. Yeah, it's great to see this again because Jeff and I have periodically done this, and it's such a
it's so striking that they even have a little note out on the side that says "keep scrolling."
Yeah, keep scrolling. Yeah, keep going. Keep scrolling.
Keep going. There's more.
What was the name of it? Do you remember what the name of it was? What was it called?
It's Visual Capitalist.
Yeah, okay, here it is. Here it is. I got this long list of stories here. And Visual Capitalist, yeah. So Jeff and I did a thing about all the money, like we talked about, and it was like based on 3D. This is kind of like the same thing that's flat. The other one was 3D, and it kept building. And you see a guy, and then you see buildings, and you start getting an idea of what that looks like. But here, let's go ahead and put this up screen here.
Yeah, so if you've been in the space for a while, you've seen this before. They updated this, I think, in 2022. So that first little square, which is almost impossible to see, that's $100 billion, which is just an ungodly big number to begin with.
Yeah, that was Sam Bankman-Fried's peak net worth right there. So there it is. There he was. $1 billion. You had sports teams.
So, yep. So the big square is $100 billion. The Sam Bankman-Fried one is somewhere smaller than that, but
$340 billion is what you got professional sports teams. I think it's probably bigger than that. Then cryptocurrency, after hitting the peak of 2.8 trillion in November 21, 760 billion today.
Yep.
You got Russia versus Ukraine GDP. Obviously, that's pretty stark in comparison. 1.8 trillion was the Russian economy. You got military spending. You can see the U.S. and China, and then everyone else. Right, so it's like, yeah, there's a lot, and everyone else.
Also on the Russia military spending thing, there was a headline yesterday that said Russia had committed to doubling their military expenditures, and I'm thinking, isn't that kind of what led to, in part, to the collapse of the Soviet Union, was trying to compete with us on spending?
Well, Mark, not to talk about that.
I don't know how that plays out for them, but
also they don't have a strong GDP, right? It's the population-wise. I mean, a lot of it's smoke and mirrors, so there's not a lot going on there. But if you look at the currency, the U.S., Euro, China, Japan, and then everybody else, you can see a lot of the same players in there. That's $8 trillion. Then we start talking about gold. Gold right here, using they're doing $1,750 an ounce. That's 11.5 trillion. And then these are the below ground reserve. I like how they have below ground reserves over here, right?
Yeah.
And look what makes up the most of that. Jewelry, way more than bars and coins.
Yep.
There's just jewelry is everywhere. It's tiny, but it's distributed all over the place. At the world's billionaires, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Arnott, Gates, Buffett. This is 12.7 trillion.
Yep.
We got the central bank balance sheets. Now, I think this is complete BS. I think until we audit the Fed, Central European Bank, People's Bank of China, and Bank of Japan, because I think we'll be pleasantly surprised by what we actually find. And I'm saying that fraud probably exists across the board, probably even worse with the US Fed. But according to this, we're at 28 trillion. Is that right?
Yep.
That can't be right. We're at 30. How can we be at 28 trillion? That doesn't even make sense. That's what their balance sheets look like, 28 trillion collectively. Look at the S&P 500. Pretty massive. Look at the comparison by that. $36 trillion dollars. And fake paper payments, right? It's like if I was like, this guy's worth $2 trillion. Yeah, on paper, okay, but it's not really going to be liquid anytime soon. And so if you, I mean, just look at this. So you look at Apple up at the top, all the way down to Visa. But look at the players. You know, you've got Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, United Healthcare, Tesla. We want to talk about inflation. That Tesla, that's a lot of, I don't know, Johnson & Johnson, Exxon, and Visa. Then we get into U.S. versus China GDP. You know, U.S. economy was 23 trillion. Chinese economy was 17 trillion. Check out the global money supply, 48.9 trillion. This includes coins, banknotes, and checking deposits. You got the broad money, that's 82.6 trillion. Got the stock market, the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, Shanghai, Euronext, Japan, and then everything else. That's pretty massive in itself. Then we get to the good part, Mark.
It's huge when you go back and think each square is $100 billion. Each one is $1,000 million. And
right.
then you start
$1,000 billion. Like you can't even think about what 1,000. It's hard enough for $1,000 million, let alone $1,000 billion and being a trillion.
Yeah.
Global debt adds up to 300 trillion. I think that might be an understatement.
But wait, it gets better.
Oh wait, there's more. Governments. So look at the ballooning debt right here. Non-financial corporates are 16%. Governments are 22%. The financial sector is 10%. Households are 14%. And that's climbing, by the way. This is 2022. 2023 is a worse picture, as illustrated by your first tweet that we started with. Then you've got the global real estate, residential, $259 trillion globally in value. But again, China is the world's most valuable residential market. You got the agricultural, 35 trillion, commercial, 33 trillion. And then you got the global wealth, $463 trillion. Look at that. Look at Europe. That's cool when you think about each one of those $100 billion. And look at China. Asia Pacific, India, Latin America, and Africa. It's so crazy that Africa, being one of the largest continents, has really been shafted since the beginning of time. It's really, and then you have every other country over there that has completely just taken advantage since the beginning of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's, we're not going to talk about it today, but when you start talking about the impact that BRICS could have, since so many countries in the global South are members of BRICS or trying to become members of BRICS, then the trade block gets pretty massive.
Look at the derivatives market.
This is where it gets interesting.
12.4 trillion. And two ways to measure. Derivatives are typically measured in two different ways. You got gross market value or notional value. The notional value of derivatives is now estimated to be $600 trillion. What?
That's 600 million.
That's crazy time. Examples: future contracts, forward contract, options, warrants, swaps. Man, keep scrolling. It says keep scrolling.
That kills me. That kills
Keep
me.
scrolling. I mean, that's a lot to visualize. Collateralized debt obligations, credit default swaps are now derivative types, and for their roles in the 2008 meltdown. But yeah, that's cool, man. It's a really good graphic. I appreciate you sharing that.
So who handles all of these derivatives? The members of the ISDA,
Yeah, they do.
which Ripple just joined.
Yeah, it's starting to get real interesting, right? And you can do a lot of speculation. Like we heard a lot of speculation with FedNow. It's like, oh, FedNow and it's Ripple Partners, and they're using XRP. And look, I think you brought this up earlier, Mark. There's so much for so many companies to play it. You know, it's like you think about the stock market. We just talk about look, you know, New York. Look at the Nasdaq versus, you know, New York Stock Exchange. They're just massive. They're two different exchanges, right? And there's still so much to play in, and we're going to be in the same sort of location. So, you know, I love the idea of moving all the money. Like Ripple's going to move all the money. Truth to be told is they're not going to move all the money. They might move a large part of it, but there's enough, you know, at the table for everybody. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there will be fierce competition, and the winners will emerge. You know, that's how it should be. You know, the way I look at this is back in the 1950s in the U.S., we had the building of the interstate highway system, and massive project. But you don't really see the benefit of it until you get the whole thing built. You got to buy the rights of way to the land. You've got to construct the road beds and the roads and the on-off ramps and parking, and you got to get gas stations and hotels and restaurants and all the other stuff that makes it usable. Once you have that, then people can use it and generate, you know, value from it. You can truck across the country. You can go on vacations and spend your money at Disney World. You can do all these things. That's where we see the value of it, but not until the whole thing gets built and connected and people start using it at scale. And so this is kind of a similar thing. All these systems that are being built and put into place that are way more complicated than an interstate highway system is. We're not going to see, you know, people keep looking for a flip of the switch moment. We're not going to see, you know, we wake up and all the money flooded in. That's just not realistic. They're building complex interconnected systems. You know, when a certain significant system comes online and spins up, we ought to see some movement there. But, you know, this is going to be a gradual thing over years. But the potential impact really is, what was it, Naveen Gupta said, you know, put a dent in the universe. It really is universe denting as far as, you know, the human population and the financial world are concerned.
Yeah, and I also think, too, that we always forget that technology, with regard to the problems, you know, we can sit there and agree and disagree about what's happening to the planet, where we are. But here's the thing: is if you look back in the 70s, you look back at the cars in the 1960s, go back to the cars in the 50s, they were not efficient when it came to burning oil, or they just weren't, right? And gasoline. So they're like looking out, say we're going to run out of oil, we're going to run out of gasoline, and we're not going to have enough petrol left. But then something amazing happened was we started seeing more efficiencies come into play. And even with, you know, there's some states that want to go ahead and levy a tax on the road system because the electric vehicles do more damage to the roads because they're a lot heavier. They're sometimes 2-3 times heavier than regular vehicles, right? So you always have like a trade-off. Like, yeah, you get this, but then you have that. And then we got to say like, okay, you got to charge it. But then, you know, in some locations it's coal plants. So then you're kind of still feeding the beast. But technology, we're getting to the point where AI is already starting to make some groundwork when it comes to taking all these medical journals and going through them and seeing where we can find, hey, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. So I feel like like the road system you were talking about is a great illustration. It's like we're still building it. It's like, frequently in business we always talk about, when we're in the middle of a project, we're flying the airplane as we're building it, right? It's like you are not 100% there, but you have to continue to move, right? So you're building an airplane while you're flying it. Not a great move, but that's kind of how we're doing it now. We're figuring it out. And, Bitcoin was the first, and people that get down on Bitcoin, I'm like, look, there's an old saying is you never forget the man who dug the well, right? You never forget who made it possible. People drink the water 100 years later. They don't remember who dug the well. Well, Bitcoin dug the well that allows us all to drink from this beautiful concept of decentralization, because it was the one thing put out there. Not that it wasn't theorized, not that David Schwartz didn't patent stuff back in the day, but it was the first time that actually worked, and this whole concept of decentralization. So I think that's pretty impressive in itself.
Absolutely. And when people get sort of zeroed in on these kind of maximalist ideologies, and it doesn't matter what project you're focused on, you lose the big picture. So I think we owed a debt of gratitude to the Bitcoin creators and all that, because somebody had to go first. Now, who created it? I don't know. Will we find out? I don't know. But the fact is, somebody did, and that got it rolling. And now we've got this really rich environment that is getting more complex and richer by the day. So I don't know if it was Brad Garlinghouse or David Schwartz. Somebody years ago talked about there eventually being a Cambrian explosion in terms of utility for blockchain and DLT. I think we're getting close to that. Once you have the regulatory pieces in place, the technology is kind of there. You get the regulations and compliance and all that clarity in place. That sets the stage for all the investment to start happening and all the development and adoption to start happening. And that's where you get, that Cambrian explosion of creativity.
Yeah. But I think we're sitting in a much better place, especially after XRP was basically ruled upon not a security. So I thought that was good. Let me get to a couple other things before we get out of here, but I wanted to throw this up here. So Jeremy Hogan. So Eleanor Terra put this out. Judge Torres says the court will seek to schedule a jury trial for the SEC v. Ripple case in the second calendar quarter of 2024. Judge Torres ordered both parties to submit blackout dates for trial by Wednesday, August 23rd. See the full deadline scheduled below. Jeremy Hogan basically commented and said the individual defendant's trial will begin around May 2024. That means final judgment in this case won't be entered until late summer of 2024 at the earliest. Any appeal would go well into 2025. The glove is on the other hand now. Delays are good for XRP and Ripple. Remember, on the other side of it, it wasn't so good. In this case, a pretty good thing.
Yep. Well, and I think John Deaton had said something about, at any rate, it doesn't affect XRP.
No, not at all. And that's so many people out there got this one wrong. And then I saw that fake. Did you see that fake article about the SEC not appealing? I was like, you could spot. This is what I always say. It's like, you're going to vet something and you don't put a source, I delete it right away. I just move right on, because you have to be able. I love when someone takes a screenshot to highlight what it is, and then in the very next panel you see there's the link, and you can go do a lot of the work yourself. But finally, somebody with the brain kind of came in here to clear everything up. And the reason I say that was because everybody was going off in all these directions. What does this mean for Ripple? And even I saw crypto publications publishing wrong stuff, saying there was an appeal and there was this and that, and what XRP wasn't safe. XRP Crypto Wolf said, do you think Ripple and the SEC will settle or go to trial? And Mark Fago, who was a securities attorney, who has, we'll try to get him on the show, but he said, you guys are in the other camp and you guys don't like my kind. I'm like, Mark, we want to have other opinions on it. You don't have to agree with us. We want to have somebody that takes but I appreciate who you are as an attorney. And I said, I'd love to have you on there. And then also you got great music taste. So I was like, that we can find common ground.
Yeah,
when he talked about music, I was like, dude, I love late nights. He's putting stuff on, telling you why he likes it. I'm like, this is fun. And whether you like his picks or not, I go listen to stuff like, oh, this is cool. I forgot about this. So there's a lot of ways you can connect with people. But Mark Fagel came in and said, the case between the SEC and Ripple, it's over. It is the case against the individuals, which is going to trial. The only thing left for Ripple is the remedy for their $700 million in unregistered security sales, which could be settled or decided by the court. That's all that's left to do here, Mark.
Yep. There was some noise today about the SEC may be filing for an interlocutory appeal.
Yeah.
And then John Deaton, I believe, piped in and said, look, that, one, it's late, but two, they would be pushing a boulder up a hill just to get the judge's approval to file. And then if they got that, they'd have to move that boulder up a really steep mountain to win their argument. So basically it's snowball's chance in hell that it comes to pass. So successfully anyway. So basically my takeaway was don't worry about it.
No, don't worry about it. But with the way the market's gone, the way XRP went up and it came back down, Moon Lamble said, hey, when the SEC wrote the motion will also seek and stay the district court proceedings, including the recently entered scheduled order, does that mean pause the jury trial proceedings? And is there any impact on the Torres decision regarding XRP programmatic sales? Bill Morgan says, yes, the SEC specifically seeks to stay the proceedings, what we were just talking about, seeks still live before Judge Torres, which is the case against Brad and Chris for their alleged accessorial involvement in the Ripple unregistered sales, whether they're accessories in that. Moon Lamble, thank you, Bill. I've also read from attorney Jeremy that the SEC is not appealing whether or not XRP is a security, just programmatic sales. But isn't that functionality the same thing? If not, why? I'm confused. And then John Deaton, who's at Crypto Law here, kind of came in and said, no, it's exactly the same thing. Or finally, and this is, I think, what's really key here. Her finding on the XRP token itself not being a security was dicta. She then did a strict Howey analysis of the sales of the SEC itself named in the complaint. And the reason she went through that was because the SEC alleged it. So she went through them one by one and picked off what the SEC was alleging. And then the Howey analysis of the programmatic and other sales are essentially that they are stuck in an appeal. We don't know what that wild new theory might concoct to support why their Howey analysis was wrong. But so far, they have argued a lot of dumb, novel legal theories and bombed each time.
Yeah. So it's baked and done. Don't sweat it. I'm sure Brad and Chris are probably still, concerned because they've got money on the line and this thing is going to get drug out for a while longer potentially. But as XRP holders, we're done. we're done. And then and then somebody was pointing out today that given the fact that we're rolling into an election year and the degree to which Congress is able to get legislation moved through during an election year is really tough. In all likelihood, XRP is going to be the only digital asset with absolute regulatory clarity, legal clarity in the U.S. for at least until 2025, minimum.
Jeff chimed in and said OTC is now a Bitcoin maxi channel, all Bitcoin all the time. There it is. It must be true if Jeff said it. So Jeff's chiming in. Good to see that. What else do we have here? What else? I want to see if we had any other comments here. He also said New York has its own issues, and boy, do they. And one of the weird things is, like, why didn't they restore? I mean, again, this goes back to the states, right? If you don't like a state, it's not like you can just pack up and move. You got a family, you've got ties, But it was weird how XRP was ruled not a security, and still our friends in New York can't buy XRP. It's very weird.
Yeah. Well, and there are still exchanges and funds that have not either relisted or finally listed.
Yeah, and then I heard about
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say about the back and forth about Gemini. Someone was saying that Gemini relisted, and somebody was saying, "Wait, did Gemini ever have it listed?" So it's like, can you call it relisted if you never had it listed? There's a lot of, at least it's more accessible.
Yeah. Well, if somebody is not listing it now, it's not because it doesn't have legal clarity. It's for another reason.
Right. Correct. Yeah, that's it. Well, Mark, look at this, man. I don't know. Somehow we talked to burn through a whole hour here, and meanwhile we had so much more to go. This is like This is a great co-host because you're on par, and the fact that we had like 15 other things to talk about and just never get to it. But the show goes where it goes, and we always have stuff we can pivot to if we need to. So, but I've enjoyed it, man. It was really great having you here, co-hosting, stepping in for Jeff. Always love you. By the way, do you know that you hold the single designation of having done this show, either co-hosting it or as a guest, more so than any? I don't even think it's close. I think you've been on like 7 or 8 times.
I'm just waiting for the profit share. Apparently,
we're waiting for that too. So
apparently, Elon's sending out checks now. So
not sending them to me. Are you getting one? No. I was like, how many compressions do you need to have? I was like, I saw these people getting these like checks of like, hey, I made 12 grand. I made this from tweeting. It's a good gig if you can get it, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm thinking, I got a picture I got to imagine that like John Deaton's getting a check because he's got mass, XRPP. I got to ask him if he's getting a check because he's always putting great content out there, making us all laugh. I mean, especially throughout what we went through. It's fantastic. But
if they're getting checks, then they deserve them because they do a ton of work on our behalf. So kudos to all the lawyers and the comedians in the community. You keep us legal and keep us sane.
Yeah, and because of that, I just fear there's a lot more bots coming in. There's a lot more regurgitating. Someone regurgitated. I saw this trending, which was Eminem. It was an interview of him talking from, I want to say 2018 maybe, but that all went around. People got all like, up in arms about him. Like, this is how we have short-term memories. We can't remember this stuff. Like, it already went around once and then it comes around again, but that's the stuff. Then you get into trending topics and then people click on your stuff. But I pay for Twitter Blue and I was told that I would have less ads, and I see more ads now than I ever have on Twitter. X, I should say. It's nonstop.
Who knows?
There's like 6 more.
I think if somebody was able to invent, and this would probably be AI driven, an AI detector that would automatically filter your feed and get rid of all the crap like that, and especially the automatically generated crap, they'd make a lot of money.
Michelle also agrees. XRPP rate paid. Really good. Really, really good. But that's it. I'll give you the last word before we get out of here, Mark. But great. It was great having you here. I appreciate you jumping in here. It's always fun to just chat. I mean, here you and I are just chatting back and forth, and people are watching us. Crazy. Great. Jeff and I talk about this all the time. We're just 2 guys talking, and then people, and there's the thing is, we were doing so much talking, we didn't get to a lot of the comments, but sometimes we'll go back and just read the comments. There's a whole show going on in there. You do another show on the comments.
There is, and you never got to the Gensler picks, so
I never got to them because I don't have them. That's why Mark had tweeted out that come check out, stop by, and I have some naked Gensler picks, and I'm like, no, I don't. I was like, what? Pretty sure I don't, but that was an awesome tweet though. It was funny stuff, but that's all we have, guys.
I'm trying to get on the XRPP payroll, so anyway, maybe next week.
It's big if you can get it, man. So it's all good, but that's it. Appreciate you coming in. Anything else? Any final words before we get out of here?
Just keep on keeping on. Thanks for the opportunity.
Keep on keeping on. And guys, we'll see you on the next one. Be back here on Saturday. Chip and Mark. I was saying, I got to be very conscious. Chip and Mark. We'll see you guys on the next one. Check it out.